The son of the company's cleaning lady drops his birth certificate, and the CEO froze when he saw that his own name was on it. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Elizabeth hired Blackwood Investigations, the most expensive private security firm in Boston, to monitor your activities, your communications, your business dealings. Everything. But why? What was she looking for? Insurance. Elizabeth Worthington didn't marry you for love, Michael. She married you for money, and she wanted to make sure she could protect her investment if you ever became a liability. Michael's legs gave out. He sat heavily on Tommy's swing set, the chains creaking under his weight. Are you saying she knew about Sarah? About the pregnancy? I'm saying she knew about Sarah before you did. Her investigators tracked every movement you made during that Boston conference. They photographed you with Sarah, recorded your conversations, documented everything. When Sarah tried to reach you through the hotel, Elizabeth's people intercepted those calls. The world tilted on its axis. What? The disconnected number, the hotel claiming no knowledge of you, that was all Elizabeth. She had her team redirect Sarah's calls, bribe hotel staff to deny your presence, even create false documentation to make it seem like you checked in under a fake name. Michael's throat closed completely. For 7 years, he believed he'd given Sarah a wrong number by mistake. For 7 years, Sarah had believed he deliberately used a false identity to avoid responsibility. When Sarah went to the hotel looking for you, Elizabeth's people told her you'd used a false name specifically to avoid any complications. They painted you as a married man looking for anonymous affairs. She destroyed us before we even had a chance. It gets worse. When Sarah discovered her pregnancy, she did try to reach you through your business. Elizabeth intercepted those calls too. Had her assistants informed Sarah that Michael Thompson Harrison was unavailable and would not be accepting personal calls regarding private matters. Michael was going to be sick. Sarah thinks I rejected her. She thinks I knew about the pregnancy and chose to ignore it. Elizabeth has been playing a 7-year game, Michael. She knew that eventually you might discover your son. When that happened, she wanted to ensure that both you and Sarah would be so damaged by guilt and misunderstanding that any relationship would be impossible. Why? Why go to such lengths? Because knowledge is power. As long as she held this secret, she controlled your marriage, your business decisions, your entire life. The custody suit isn't about wanting Tommy. It's about demonstrating that she can take anything from you, even your child. Michael stared at the kitchen window where Sarah sat helping Tommy with homework, her dark hair falling across her face as she patiently explained something. All these years, she'd believed he was a coward who abandoned his responsibilities. All these years, he believed he was careless with the most important phone number of his life. There's more. Williams continued. Elizabeth's been selling information about your business deals to competitors for years. The Blackstone merger was just the culmination. She's been systematically undermining your company to position herself for the perfect takeover. Do you have proof of all this? Invoices, photographs, recorded conversations, financial transfers, enough evidence to put her away for fraud, racketeering, and about 15 other felonies. The question is, what do you want to do with it? Michael looked through the window again. Tommy was showing Sarah something in his science book, both of them laughing at some shared joke. They were beautiful together, this family he'd almost lost forever. I want to tell Sarah the truth. All of it. And then I want to make sure Elizabeth never hurts anyone again. Michael, there's one more thing. Something I found in Elizabeth's personal files that you need to know before you talk to Sarah. What now? Elizabeth tried to have Sarah fired from multiple jobs over the years. Not just recently, this has been going on since Tommy was 2. Every time Sarah found stable employment, Elizabeth would have her people make anonymous calls questioning Sarah's reliability, her morals, her ability to balance work and single motherhood. The swing set chains creaked in the evening breeze. Michael felt something breaking inside his chest, not heartbreak, but the sound of rage crystallizing into purpose. She kept them poor on purpose. She kept them struggling, kept them vulnerable, kept them exactly where she wanted them. If Sarah had ever achieved financial stability, she might have had the resources to search for you more effectively. Michael stood up, his decision made. Send me everything you have. Every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence. Tomorrow morning, Elizabeth is going to learn that some games have consequences she never anticipated. As he walked back toward the house, toward the light and laughter and love that had almost been stolen from him forever, Michael Harrison felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The absolute certainty that he was finally fighting for something that truly mattered. The truth would hurt. Sarah would have to relive 7 years of manipulation and lies. But the truth would also set them free to build something real on a foundation of honesty rather than the quicksand of Elizabeth's deceptions. Tommy looked up as Michael entered the kitchen, his face bright with excitement. Dad, I figured out why Mars looks red. It's because of iron oxide. That's like rust. Isn't that cool? Very cool, buddy, Michael said, ruffling his son's hair. Want to know something even cooler? Tomorrow, we're going to fix some things that have been broken for a very long time. The Newton Police Department's conference room felt surreal as Michael sat beside Sarah, both of them staring at stacks of evidence that revealed 7 years of calculated cruelty. Detective Williams had arranged for them to review Elizabeth's files before the custody hearing, and the scope of the deception was staggering. Sarah's hands trembled as she examined photographs of herself and Tommy taken without their knowledge, at the grocery store, at Tommy's school, at the playground. Years of surveillance, documented and catalogued like evidence in a criminal case. She knew where we lived, Sarah whispered, her voice hollow with shock. She knew Tommy's school schedule, his favorite park, the library where we went for story time. She was watching us like we were specimens in a laboratory. Michael pointed to a financial document. Look at this payment record. She paid Blackwood Investigations $50,000 in March 2018. Remember what happened in March 2018? Sarah's face went pale. I lost my job at the medical center. My supervisor said there had been complaints about my reliability, but I never understood where they came from. I was never late, never missed a shift. Because Elizabeth had her people make anonymous calls. Multiple calls, from different numbers, all questioning your character and work ethic. Detective Williams spread out more documents. She did this every time you found stable employment. The school district job in 2019, the accounting firm position in 2020, even the part-time work at the community center. Elizabeth systematically destroyed your career prospects to keep you vulnerable. Sarah stood abruptly, pacing to the window. 7 years? 7 years I struggled to understand why I couldn't keep a job despite excellent references. 7 years I worried that I was somehow failing Tommy, that I wasn't providing enough stability. Sarah, Michael said gently, you didn't fail anyone. You survived a campaign of psychological warfare that would have broken most people. But why? Sarah turned back to face them, tears streaming down her cheeks. Why go to such lengths to hurt people she'd never even met? Williams pulled out a thick folder marked Personal Surveillance. Because she knew Michael would eventually discover Tommy. When that happened, she wanted to ensure that you'd be too damaged by poverty and struggled to be a threat to her marriage. Michael examined transcripts of phone calls, Sarah's desperate attempts to reach him, intercepted and rerouted by Elizabeth's team. Each page revealed another layer of manipulation, another moment when his life could have been different if not for his wife's interference. This call here. Williams pointed to a highlighted transcript. Sarah called your office in December 2017, when Tommy was 8 months old. She spoke to someone claiming to be your assistant, explained that she needed to reach you regarding an urgent personal matter involving your son. What did they tell her? Michael asked, though he dreaded the answer. That Mr. Harrison was aware of her situation and had no interest in contact with her or the child. That any further attempts to reach him would be considered harassment and handled by legal authorities. Sarah's sob filled the small room. I remember that call. I was so desperate, so scared. Tommy had been sick, and I was behind on rent, and I thought if I could just explain to you about your son. Michael felt something break inside his chest. Sarah, I never got that message. I never knew you were trying to reach me. The person on the phone was so cold, so definitive. They said you'd already discussed the matter with your wife and made your decision. I hung up feeling like I'd been slapped. Williams continued through the evidence methodically. Bank records showing payments to hotel staff for false information. Recorded conversations between Elizabeth and her investigators discussing containment strategies. Even correspondence with lawyers about potential custody challenges dating back 5 years. She's been planning this custody case since Tommy was 2 years old, Williams explained. The elevator doors opened to reveal Richard's assistant, Janet, looking frazzled. Mrs. Henderson. Thank goodness you're here. Richard has been, where is he? His office. But he gave strict instructions not to be disturbed. He's been on the phone with lawyers for the past hour. Lawyers. Eleanor's blood chilled. Richard was already taking action. She swept past Janet without another word, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a countdown timer. Richard's office door stood closed, but she could hear his voice through the thick oak, sharp, decisive, nothing like the shocked man she'd seen downstairs. Eleanor didn't knock. She never knocked. Richard looked up from his desk as she entered, his face a storm cloud of barely contained emotion. Legal documents were scattered across the mahogany surface, and his computer screen showed what appeared to be a bank transfer interface. Mother! His voice was ice. Perfect timing. Richard, we need to, did you know? The question hit her like a slap. Did you know I had a son? Eleanor's practiced composure never wavered. I handled a situation that would have ruined your life. Handled? Richard's voice erupted like a volcano. You made me abandon my child. You were 28 years old, about to marry Victoria Westmore, daughter of our biggest investor. That cleaning woman would have destroyed everything we built. Her name is Maria. And that boy, that beautiful, incredible boy, is Tommy. Your grandson. Eleanor's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the calculating mind beneath. Alleged grandson. Richard's fist slammed against the desk. I've already ordered DNA tests, but I don't need them. He has my eyes, my chin, even the same cowlick I had as a child. Richard, think rationally. This woman kept this secret for 7 years. Now, suddenly, when you're worth $800 million, she conveniently shows up with a birth certificate? It's obviously a con. She didn't show up. Her son brought me my own birth certificate by accident. She tried to keep him away from me. This detail stopped Eleanor cold. In all her calculations, she hadn't considered the possibility that Maria wouldn't want Richard's money or attention. What do you want from me? Eleanor asked carefully. The truth. All of it. Richard's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it, and his expression softened. It's from Maria. She's agreed to meet me tonight. At a coffee shop in her neighborhood. Eleanor's mind raced. A coffee shop in Maria's neighborhood meant the South Side, far from the social circles that mattered. Perhaps this could still be contained. Richard, I'm begging you to think this through. Victoria doesn't know about any of this yet. Your reputation, the company stock price, the board of directors. I don't care about any of that. You should. Because Victoria's father owns 30% of this company. If this scandal breaks, if your marriage falls apart, Harold Westmore could destroy us overnight. The threat hit its mark. Richard's face paled as the implication sank in. His personal life wasn't just personal anymore, it was a business liability worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I won't abandon my son again, Richard said quietly. I won't make that mistake twice. Then we need to be smart about this. Strategic. Eleanor moved closer to his desk, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We can support the child financially without acknowledging paternity publicly. We can, no. Richard's voice was steel. I'm done hiding. I'm done letting other people decide what's right for my life. Eleanor's phone rang. The caller ID made her heart skip. Victoria Henderson. It's your wife, Eleanor said, showing him the screen. Someone's already told her. Richard stared at the phone as it continued to ring. Victoria never called during business hours unless something was wrong. Very wrong. Answer it, he said finally. But remember, Mother, the days of you controlling my life are over. Eleanor swiped to answer, her voice a perfect mask of calm. Hello, Victoria. Is it true? Victoria's voice was shrill with panic. Someone called me from the office. They said Richard was seen with some cleaning woman and a child who looks just like him. Is it true? Eleanor's eyes met Richard's across the desk. The conversation that followed would determine whether the Henderson family empire survived the next 24 hours. But what neither of them knew was that Maria Santos was sitting in her tiny apartment at that very moment, staring at her own phone and the text message she just sent out, a message that would change everything once again. Maria's hands shook as she set her phone down on the kitchen table of their small apartment. The text message she just sent to Richard felt like stepping off a cliff into an unknown future. Meet me at Rosita's Coffee, 7 p.m. We need to talk about Tommy's future. Come alone. Tommy sat across from her, coloring in a superhero coloring book, seemingly unaware that his entire world had shifted in the span of 2 hours. But Maria knew better. Her son was intelligent beyond his years, and she could see the questions brewing behind his bright blue eyes. Mijo, she said softly, switching to the Spanish they spoke at home when the emotions were too big for English. Are you okay? Tommy looked up from his coloring book, his crayon hovering over Captain America's shield. Mom, was that really my papa? The word hit Maria like a physical blow. Papa. Tommy had never used that word before, never even asked about having a father. She'd convinced herself that her love was enough, that a single mother could fill every role her son needed. See, Mijo. I think he is. Why didn't you tell me? Maria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 7 years of carefully constructed lies. How could she explain to a 7-year-old the complexities of class, power, and heartbreak that had led to this moment? It's complicated, baby. Adult stuff. Is he nice? The innocent question broke Maria's heart. Nice. If only it were that simple. I think he can be. But he lives in a very different world than we do. Tommy went back to his coloring, but his next words hit Maria like a thunderbolt. Mrs. Patterson says my daddy must be rich because I'm so smart. She says smart kids usually have smart parents. Mrs. Patterson was Tommy's second-grade teacher, and apparently, she'd been making observations that Maria had hoped no one would notice. Tommy was exceptionally bright, reading at a 5th-grade level, solving math problems that challenged kids twice his age, asking questions that revealed a mind that worked differently than his peers. Now Maria understood where that intelligence came from. Her phone rang, and her heart nearly stopped when she saw Richard's name on the caller ID. She'd programmed his number after their encounter, though she wasn't sure why. Hello? Maria. His voice was different over the phone, deeper, more uncertain. Thank you for agreeing to meet. This is for Tommy, not for you. I understand. I want you to know that I'm going to take care of everything. You and Tommy will never have to worry about money again. Maria's temper flared. Is that what you think this is about? Money? I don't know what this is about. I don't know anything. I've spent the last 7 years not knowing I had a son. You could have known. You chose not to. That's not... Richard's voice caught. My mother told me you'd taken money and signed papers agreeing to never contact us again. Maria's blood turned to ice. What papers? She said you'd agreed to keep the baby away from our family in exchange for a settlement. I never signed anything. I never took any money from your family. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that Maria thought the call had dropped. Richard? Are you there? She lied to me. His voice was barely a whisper. My mother lied to me for 7 years. Maria sank into her kitchen chair, the full weight of the deception hitting her. Eleanor Henderson hadn't just hidden Tommy's existence from Richard. She'd made Richard believe that Maria was the one who wanted to keep them apart. What did she tell you exactly? Maria asked. That you'd come to her asking for money. That you'd threatened to cause a scandal unless we paid you to disappear. That you'd signed a non-disclosure agreement and left Chicago. I never left Chicago. I've been cleaning offices in your building for 7 years, Richard. 7 years. I've walked past your picture in the lobby every single day. The irony was crushing. While Richard believed she'd taken money and run, Maria had been scrubbing toilets 15 floors below his office, raising their son on minimum wage and food stamps. God, what have I done? Richard's voice was broken. What has my family done? You want to know what your mother really did? Maria's voice hardened with 7 years of buried rage. She came to my apartment when I was 8 months pregnant. She told me you were engaged to someone else, someone appropriate. She said if I ever tried to contact you or your family, she'd have me deported. Deported? But I wasn't a citizen then. I was terrified, pregnant, and alone. She made it very clear that I had no power, no rights, and no chance of ever being part of your world. Richard's breathing was audible over the phone, sharp and ragged. She threatened you. She didn't threaten Richard. She promised. And I believed her. Tommy looked up from his coloring book, sensing the shift in his mother's voice. Mom? Are you crying? Maria wiped her eyes quickly. I'm okay, baby. But she wasn't okay. 7 years of struggling alone, 7 years of watching other kids with their fathers. 7 years of Tommy asking innocent questions about why he didn't have a daddy like the other children, all because of one woman's determination to keep her son's life perfect. Maria. Richard's voice was urgent now. I need you to know something. I never stopped thinking about you. Even after I believed you'd left, even after I married Victoria, I thought about you. Don't. Maria's voice was sharp. Don't you dare make this about romance. This is about Tommy. Only Tommy. You're right. I'm sorry. But I need you to understand, I would have chosen you. If I'd known about Tommy, if I'd known the truth, I would have chosen both of you. The words she dreamed of hearing for 7 years hit Maria like a sledgehammer. But they came too late, wrapped in too much pain and deception to bring any comfort. We'll see you at 7, Maria said quietly. And Richard? If you ever lie to me again, if you ever let anyone in your family hurt my son, I will disappear so completely that you'll never find us. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Maria hung up and looked at Tommy, who was now watching her with those impossibly blue eyes, Richard's eyes. Are we going to see him again? Tommy asked. Yes, Mijo. Tonight. Good, Tommy said, returning to his coloring. I want to ask him if he knows any superheroes. Despite everything, Maria smiled. Her son's innocence was still intact, even as the adult world crumbled around them. But what Maria didn't know was that Richard was already making plans that would change their lives forever. Plans that his mother would fight with every weapon in her considerable arsenal. The war for Tommy's future was just beginning. Victoria Henderson stood in the marble foyer of her Lake Forest mansion, staring at her reflection in the antique mirror her mother-in-law had insisted on importing from France. At 35, she was still breathtakingly beautiful, the kind of beauty that graced magazine covers and charity galas. But today, her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the terror in her green eyes. Her marriage to Richard had been many things: strategic, beneficial, socially advantageous. But it had never been passionate. They'd settled into a comfortable routine of separate bedrooms, separate social circles, and carefully orchestrated public appearances. Victoria had convinced herself it was enough. Now, sitting on her Italian leather sofa with a crystal tumbler of gin, she realized how naive she'd been. Her phone buzzed with another text from her father. Board meeting moved to tomorrow morning. We need to discuss damage control. Harold Westmore didn't waste time on subtlety. When his son-in-law's reputation was threatened, the company's stock price was threatened, and Harold's 30% ownership stake was threatened right along with it. The front door opened with the soft whisper of well-oiled hinges. Richard's footsteps echoed across the marble, each one like a nail in the coffin of their marriage. Victoria? His voice carried across the vast space. In here. Richard appeared in the doorway of the living room, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. His tie hung loose, his hair was mussed, and his eyes held a wild quality she'd never seen before. "We need to talk," he said. "I think we're a bit past talking, don't you?" Victoria took a sip of her gin, grateful for the burn that distracted from the pain in her chest. "I've been fielding calls all afternoon. Reporters, board members, even some of our friends. Apparently, half of Chicago already knows." Richard sank into the chair across from her, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "I'm sorry you had to hear it from strangers." "Are you?" "Because I'm getting the distinct impression that you're not sorry about any of this. I'm sorry that you're hurt. I'm sorry that our marriage is ending. But I'm not sorry that I found my son." The blunt honesty hit Victoria like a slap. In 8 years of marriage, Richard had never been this direct about anything. "Your alleged son," she corrected. "We don't even know for certain. He's mine, Victoria. I know it the same way I know my own heartbeat." Victoria studied her husband's face, searching for any sign of doubt or uncertainty. She found none. Richard's transformation was complete and absolute. The careful, controlled businessman she'd married had been replaced by a man driven by something primal and unstoppable. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "I don't know. I'm meeting with Maria tonight to discuss custody arrangements." "Custody?" Victoria's voice rose an octave. "Richard, you can't be serious. You can't just blow up our entire life over some woman you barely knew." "I knew her well enough to love her." The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest, not her heart, exactly, because she'd never been in love with Richard. But her security, her identity, her entire carefully constructed world. "Did you ever love me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Richard's hesitation was answer enough. "I cared about you," he said finally. "I respected you. I thought that would be enough. But it wasn't." "No. It wasn't." Victoria finished her gin in one burning gulp. "Your mother is going to fight this. You know that, right? She's already called me 3 times today, strategizing about how to contain the scandal. Let her try. I'm done letting my mother run my life." "And what about the company? Your father's legacy? Everything we've built together?" "The company will survive. It might take a hit, but it'll survive." Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're incredibly naive if you think my father will just sit back and watch his investment crumble because you've decided to play house with your cleaning lady." Richard's jaw tightened. "Don't call her that." "What should I call her? Your true love? The mother of your secret child? The woman who's about to destroy everything we've worked for? Call her by her name. Maria." Victoria's phone rang. Eleanor Henderson's name flashed on the screen. "It's your mother," Victoria said. "Should I tell her you've completely lost your mind?" "Tell her whatever you want. I don't care anymore." Victoria answered the phone, her voice artificially bright. "Hello, Eleanor." "Victoria, darling, we need to meet immediately. I have a plan." Richard shook his head firmly, but Victoria was already nodding. "I'll be right there." After she hung up, Richard leaned forward. "Victoria, whatever my mother is planning, I'm going to listen to her. Because unlike you, I'm not ready to throw away everything we've built for some romantic fantasy. It's not a fantasy. I have a son, Victoria. A 7-year-old boy who's been living in poverty while we debate the thread count of our Egyptian cotton sheets." The accusation stung because it was true. Victoria had never wanted for anything, had never even considered that such want existed in the world beyond her carefully curated social circles. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Do you want me to just step aside gracefully while you play happy family with someone else? I want you to understand that this isn't about you. This isn't about our marriage or our problems or what we should have done differently. This is about a little boy who deserves to know his father." Victoria stood, smoothing her designer dress with trembling hands. "I'm going to see your mother. When I get back, I want you gone." "Victoria, I mean it, Richard. Pack a bag and get out. I need time to think, And I can't do that with you here, looking at me like I'm the villain in your love story. Richard stood as well, his expression sad but resolute. For what it's worth, I never wanted it to end this way. No, Victoria said, walking toward the door. You wanted it to end with me never finding out about any of this. There's a difference. As she left the room, Victoria heard Richard's phone buzz with another text message. She didn't need to look to know it was from Maria, confirming their meeting time. In 6 hours, Richard would sit across from the woman he'd never stopped loving, and Victoria's marriage would officially be over. But Eleanor Henderson had other plans. Plans that would test just how far a mother would go to protect her son's empire, even if it meant destroying his happiness in the process. Rosita's coffee shop sat on the corner of 26th and Halsted, a small oasis of warmth in the heart of Pilsen. The evening crowd was typical for a Thursday. Tired workers grabbing dinner, students hunched over laptops, elderly men playing dominoes in the corner. It was a world away from the gleaming towers of downtown Chicago, and Richard felt like an alien in his $1,000 suit. He'd arrived early, choosing a table near the window where he could watch the street. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped his coffee cup, the enormity of what was happening hitting him in waves. In the span of 8 hours, he discovered he was a father, confronted his mother's lies, ended his marriage, and possibly destroyed his business empire, and he never felt more alive. The bell above the door chimed, and Maria entered with Tommy in tow. Richard's breath caught in his throat. She changed from her work uniform into a simple blue dress that made her dark eyes luminous, and Tommy wore a button-down shirt that was clearly his. Dress up. Clothes. They approached his table cautiously, Tommy's eyes wide as he took in his father's appearance. To a 7-year-old from the South Side, Richard probably looked like a character from a movie, impossibly clean, impossibly wealthy, impossibly different from everyone in Tommy's world. Thank you for coming, Richard said, standing as they reached the table. Maria nodded curtly, her defenses clearly up. Tommy wanted to see you. This is for him. They sat across from each other, the small table feeling like a chasm. Tommy wiggled in his chair, his excitement barely contained. Are you really, really rich? Tommy asked without preamble. Richard almost smiled. Yes, I am. Do you have a swimming pool? I do. A big one? Very big. Tommy's eyes widened with wonder, but Maria's expression grew colder. Tommy, why don't you go pick out a cookie from the counter? Take your time. As Tommy scampered away, Maria leaned forward, her voice low and intense. I need you to understand something. I don't want your money. I don't want your charity. I don't want anything from you except honesty. I want to be in his life, Maria. Really in it. Not just weekend visits or Christmas presents. I want to be his father. You can't just decide that after 7 years. You can't just show up and expect. I know. Richard's voice was quiet but firm. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But I'm asking anyway. I'm begging you to let me try. Maria stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. Your mother came to see me again today. Richard's blood chilled. What? 2 hours ago. She was waiting outside my apartment building when I got home from work. What did she say? Maria's laugh was bitter. She offered me $5 million to take Tommy and disappear. Permanently. The number hit Richard like a physical blow. $5 million, more money than Maria could spend in several lifetimes, enough to give Tommy every advantage money could buy, enough to erase every financial worry forever. Please tell me you said no. I told her that if she ever came near my son again, I'd call the police. Relief flooded through Richard, but Maria wasn't finished. Then she told me something interesting. About your wife. Richard's stomach dropped. What about Victoria? Apparently, Mrs. Henderson has a drinking problem. And gambling debts. And a boyfriend named Marcus who works at her country club. The revelations hit Richard like machine gun fire. Victoria's afternoon. Tennis lessons. Her mysterious credit card charges. Her increasingly frequent girls' nights out. Suddenly everything made horrible sense. She's been investigating Victoria for months. Maria continued, gathering evidence. She said if I don't take the money and disappear, she'll make sure the divorce gets very messy. She'll claim you're mentally unstable, that you abandoned your wife for a gold-digging immigrant, that you're unfit to have custody of any children. Richard's hands clenched into fists. His mother's capacity for manipulation still shocked him, even after 36 years of experience. There's more, Maria said quietly. She knows about Tommy's test scores. She knows he's gifted. She said she could get him into the best private schools, the best universities. She could give him opportunities that a cleaning woman never could. And she's not wrong, Richard. I work 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, and we still barely get by. I can't give Tommy the life he deserves. We can give him that life. Together. Maria's eyes filled with tears. How? Your mother will destroy you if you choose us. Your wife will take half of everything in the divorce. The scandal will ruin your business. How long before you decide that choosing your son was the biggest mistake of your life? The question hung in the air like a blade. Richard could feel the weight of generations of Henderson expectations pressing down on him, the empire his grandfather had built, the legacy he was supposed to protect. Tommy returned with a chocolate chip cookie the size of his head, completely oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around him. Mom, can I show him my report card? Tommy asked. Mrs. Patterson says it's the best one in the whole class. Maria wiped her eyes quickly. Of course, Mijo. Tommy pulled a folded paper from his pocket, smoothing it carefully on the table. Richard stared at the perfect row of A's, the teacher's glowing comments about Tommy's exceptional abilities, the reading level that was years ahead of his grade. I'm really good at math, Tommy said proudly. And Mrs. Patterson says I write stories better than some grown-ups. Richard's throat tightened with emotion. His son, brilliant, beautiful, perfect, had been achieving these milestones without a father's pride to celebrate them. I'm so proud of you, Richard managed. Will you help me with my homework sometimes? Tommy asked. Mom tries, but she gets confused with the big words. The innocent request broke something inside Richard's chest. Here was his son, asking for something so simple, so fundamental, and it was the one thing Richard had never been allowed to give. Tommy, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. I want to help you with everything. Homework, baseball, bikes, video games, everything a dad should help with. Even if Mom says no? The question was like a knife to the heart. Richard looked at Maria, seeing his own pain reflected in her eyes. Your mom and I are going to figure this out, Richard said carefully. But no matter what happens, I want you to know that I love you. Even though I just met you today, I love you more than anything in the world. Tommy beamed, but Maria's expression had grown distant. Richard's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it, and his face went white. What is it? Maria asked. It's from my lawyer. Victoria filed for divorce an hour ago. She's claiming adultery and demanding half of everything. Maria's phone buzzed a moment later. Her face went pale as she read the message. What's wrong? Richard asked. It's from my supervisor. I've been fired. Effective immediately. No explanation given. They stared at each other across the small table, the reality of their situation crashing down around them. Eleanor Henderson had just declared war, and the first casualties were their jobs, their security, and their faith in happy endings. But Tommy, still focused on his cookie, looked up with bright eyes and asked the question that would change everything. Does this mean we're going to be a real family now? Richard's hands shook as he set his phone down on the coffee shop table. Around them, the normal sounds of evening life continued, conversations in Spanish and English, the hiss of the espresso machine, children laughing at nearby tables. But for Richard, Maria, and Tommy, the world had just shifted into something unrecognizable. Mom? Tommy's voice was small, confused by the tension that had suddenly filled their small corner. What does fired mean? Maria's jaw was set like steel, but Richard could see the fear behind her eyes. It means Mommy doesn't have a job anymore, Mijo. But why? You're the best cleaner. Mrs. Rodriguez always says so. The innocence of his son's question hit Richard like a sledgehammer. Tommy didn't understand that his existence had just cost his mother her livelihood. He didn't comprehend that powerful people could destroy lives with a phone call. Richard's phone rang. His lawyer's name flashed on the screen, and he answered immediately. James? What's the situation? Not good, Richard. Victoria's attorney is Harold Westmore's personal lawyer, the same firm that handles corporate litigation for half the Fortune 500. They've filed for emergency injunctions freezing your assets, claiming you're attempting to hide marital property. That's ridiculous. I haven't touched our joint accounts. They're arguing that your sudden discovery of a secret child constitutes evidence of a long-term pattern of deception and financial fraud. They want a forensic accountant to examine 7 years of your personal expenses. Richard closed his eyes. His mother's fingerprints were all over this strategy. What about custody? Can they prevent me from seeing Tommy? That's where it gets complicated. Since paternity hasn't been legally established, you technically have no parental rights. If Maria were to move out of state with the child, she wouldn't do that. Richard looked across the table at Maria, who was pretending not to listen while helping Tommy with his cookie. Would you? Maria met his eyes, her expression unreadable. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just lost my job, Richard. I have rent due in 10 days and no income. I'll cover your expenses. All of them. With what money? Didn't you just say your assets are frozen? His phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Come home. We need to discuss your future. I have to go, Richard said, standing abruptly. My mother wants to meet. Be careful, Maria said quietly. She's more dangerous than you think. Richard knelt down to Tommy's level. Hey, buddy, I need to go handle some grown-up stuff. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault, okay? Tommy nodded solemnly. Are you going to fight the bad guys? Something like that. His phone rang again. This time it was Victoria. Richard. Her voice was slurred, and he could hear ice clinking in a glass. Your mother just left. We had a fascinating conversation about your priorities. Victoria, you don't have to do this. We can work out a reasonable divorce settlement without destroying each other. Reasonable? Victoria's laugh was sharp with gin and bitterness. You call abandoning your wife for some cleaning woman reasonable? What do you want? Everything. The house, the accounts, half the company stock. And I want you to sign away any claim to custody of that child. Richard's grip tightened on the phone. Never. Then you'd better hope your cleaning lady can afford a good lawyer. Because mine is about to make her life very difficult. The line went dead. Richard sat in his car for a long moment, staring at the warm light spilling from Rosita's coffee shop. 30 minutes later, Richard stood in the marble foyer of his childhood home, facing Eleanor Henderson. She waited in the library, a brandy snifter in her manicured hands. You look terrible, she said without preamble. I feel worse. Victoria filed for divorce. Maria lost her job. Are you happy now? Eleanor's expression didn't change. I'm trying to save your life, Richard. You're just too blinded by sentiment to see it. Sentiment? Is that what you call loving my son? You've known this child for 12 hours. Don't confuse biological connection with parental love. Richard moved closer to his mother's chair. You had no right to take that choice away from me. 7 years, Mother. 7 years I could have been his father. 7 years you would have been miserable, tied to a woman who could never be part of our world. Eleanor stood, setting her brandy aside. Harold Westmore called me an hour ago. The board is meeting tomorrow morning to discuss a vote of no confidence. If this scandal continues, they'll remove you as CEO. Let them, Richard said. Eleanor turned, surprise flickering across her features. You don't mean that. I mean every word. I'd rather lose the company than lose my son again. For the first time in his life, Richard saw something like fear in his mother's eyes. You're making a mistake that will haunt you for the rest of your life, she said. Maybe. But it'll be my mistake to make. Eleanor's voice stopped him as he reached the door. That woman won't last, Richard. When the money runs out, when she realizes what it really costs to fight people like us, she'll take that boy and disappear. But as he drove back toward the south side, Richard made a decision that would change everything. He was done being the dutiful son. Tomorrow, he would fight for Tommy with everything he had, even if it meant losing everything else. The Chicago law offices of Woodman, Pierce and Associates occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown tower, their conference rooms designed to intimidate, and their hourly rates calculated to bankrupt anyone who wasn't already wealthy. At 9 a.m. sharp, Maria Santos sat at a polished mahogany table, feeling like a mouse surrounded by very expensive cats. Her court-appointed attorney, David Kim, was fresh out of law school and looked barely old enough to drink legally. Across from them sat Victoria Henderson's legal team, 3 partners, 2 associates, and enough leather briefcases to outfit a small army. Mrs. Santos, began Margaret Whitman, the lead partner whose silver hair and pearl necklace radiated old money authority. We appreciate you taking this meeting. We hope to resolve this matter without unnecessary litigation. Maria's fingers tightened around her purse strap. What do you want? Simply put, we want what's best for everyone involved, especially the child. A younger attorney slid a manila folder across the table. Maria opened it with trembling hands, her heart sinking as she read the contents. Employment records showing disciplinary actions she'd never received. Bank statements suggesting financial irresponsibility. Medical records indicating mental health issues she'd never been treated for. Even a police report claiming she'd been arrested for shoplifting, something that had never happened. This is all lies, Maria whispered. Is it? Margaret's voice was silk over steel. The court system can be quite thorough in their investigations, Mrs. Santos. They have ways of uncovering information that might prove embarrassing. David Kim was frantically taking notes, his inexperience showing in every nervous gesture. These documents could be challenged. We could you? With what resources? Mrs. Santos is unemployed, with no income and substantial debts. How exactly would she fund a prolonged legal battle? Maria felt the walls closing in around her. Every document in the folder was carefully crafted to paint her as an unfit mother, unstable, dishonest, financially irresponsible. What do you want from me? Maria asked quietly. Margaret smiled like a shark sensing blood. We want to offer you a way out. A solution that benefits everyone. She slid another document across the table. This one bore the letterhead of a prestigious private school in Switzerland. The Institut La Rosie is one of the finest educational institutions in the world. The full scholarship package includes tuition, room, board, and all expenses through university graduation. The total value is approximately $1.2 million. Maria stared at the document, her mind reeling. You want to send Tommy to boarding school? We want to give him the best possible future. He would graduate perfectly positioned for admission to Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford, any university in the world. In Switzerland, thousands of miles away from me. You would be provided with a comfortable settlement as well. All we ask in return is that you sign a simple agreement acknowledging that Richard Henderson is not the biological father of your child. The room went silent. David Kim's pen had stopped moving entirely. But he is Tommy's father, Maria said. DNA tests can be unreliable. Lab errors occur. And without Richard's cooperation, proving paternity becomes quite difficult. Maria's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and her blood turned cold. Emergency custody hearing scheduled for 2 p.m. today. They're claiming you're an unfit mother. Get to the courthouse immediately. It was from Richard. You're taking Tommy away from me, Maria said, her voice barely above a whisper. We're offering you a choice. Margaret replied calmly. Sign the agreement, accept the scholarship, and your son gets the life he deserves. Refuse, and we proceed with the custody hearing. Maria stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the polished floor. I need to think. Of course. But Mrs. Santos? The custody hearing is in 5 hours. After that, our offer expires. Maria stumbled out of the conference room, her mind reeling with the impossible choice she'd been given. Her phone rang. Richard's name appeared on the screen. Maria, where are you? I'd been trying to reach you all morning. I was meeting with Victoria's lawyers. They want me to sign papers saying you're not Tommy's father. What? That's insane. The DNA results will be ready tomorrow. They don't care about DNA results. They care about legal documents and judges who play golf with Harold Westmore. I'm coming to get you. We'll face this together. Richard. Maria's voice broke. They offered to send Tommy to the best school in the world. Full scholarship. He'd get opportunities one could never give him. At the cost of losing his mother? Maria, you can't seriously be considering, what if they're right? What if fighting them just hurts Tommy in the end? When Richard spoke again, his voice was steel. Meet me at my lawyer's office. We're going to war. But as Maria hung up the phone, she couldn't shake Margaret Whitman's words. The best private school in the world. Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford. A future beyond anything a cleaning woman's son could dream of. All she had to do was give up her child and lie about his father. Richard's law office occupied the corner suite of the Willis Tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of Lake Michigan. Today, he barely noticed the view as he paced behind his lawyer's desk, his phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it costs, Richard said into the phone. I want the best family law attorney in Chicago. Money is no object. James Morrison, his corporate lawyer, looked up from a stack of legal documents. Richard, we need to talk about the practical realities here. Victoria's team has been planning this for months. They have a judge in their pocket, fabricated evidence, and unlimited resources. Then we'll expose the judge. We'll prove the evidence is fake. With what? Your assets are frozen. The board is meeting this afternoon to discuss removing you as CEO. By tomorrow, you might not have the resources to fight anyone. Richard stopped pacing, the weight of his situation finally hitting him. In less than 24 hours, he'd gone from being one of Chicago's most powerful men to having his life systematically dismantled. There has to be something we can do. James pulled a file from his briefcase. Actually, there might be. I'd been doing some research on Judge Morrison. And? He's not as clean as Harold Westmore thinks. 3 years ago, Morrison's son was arrested for DUI. The charges were mysteriously dropped after Morrison ruled in favor of Westmore Industries in a major environmental lawsuit. Richard felt a spark of hope. That's bribery. It's suspicious. But proving it would take months of investigation. We don't have months. We have hours. Richard's phone buzzed with another call. Maria's name appeared on the screen. Maria? Where are you? In my car outside the courthouse. Her voice was shaky, exhausted. Richard, I'd been thinking about what Victoria's lawyer said. About the school in Switzerland. Please tell me you're not considering their offer. Tommy deserves the best education money can buy. He's brilliant, Richard. How can I stand in the way of that? Richard could hear the pain in her voice, the terrible love of a mother willing to sacrifice herself for her child's future. Because he needs his mother more than he needs an expensive school. Does he? I'm a high school dropout who cleans toilets for a living. What can I teach him about success? You can teach him about love. About loyalty. About fighting for what's right even when the odds are against you. Maria's soft sob carried through the phone. I'm scared, Richard. I'm so scared of making the wrong choice. Then don't make it alone. Trust me. Trust us. We can beat them. How? They have everything: money, power, lawyers, judges. What do we have? Richard looked out at the lake. We have the truth. And sometimes that's enough. A knock on the office door interrupted them. James's secretary entered, her face pale with urgency. Mr. Henderson? There's a woman here to see you. She says it's about the custody case. Send her in. The woman who entered was perhaps 50, with graying hair and nervous eyes. She wore a simple dress and carried a worn purse. Mr. Henderson? My name is Catherine Morrison. On Judge Morrison's ex-wife. Richard's heart skipped. Mrs. Morrison, how can I help you? I heard about your case. About how my ex-husband is involved. Catherine's hands shook as she opened her purse. There are things you should know about Daniel. Things he doesn't want anyone to know. She pulled out a manila envelope stuffed with documents. For 20 years, I watched my husband take bribes from wealthy families. Money to fix custody cases, to rule in favor of corporations, to make problems disappear for people who could afford his services. James leaned forward eagerly. You have proof? Bank records. Recordings. Email correspondence. I've been collecting evidence for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. Richard stared at the envelope. Why now? Why help us? Catherine's eyes filled with tears. Because Daniel destroyed our family with his corruption. He took money to rule against me in our own custody case. I lost my children because I couldn't pay what Harold Westmore paid him. Richard's phone rang again. This time it was Eleanor. Richard, you need to come home immediately. The board has moved up their meeting. They're voting on your removal in 2 hours. Let them vote, Mother. I have bigger things to worry about. You don't understand. If they remove you as CEO, you lose all your stock options. You won't be able to afford this custody fight. Richard looked at Catherine Morrison's evidence. Maybe. But at least I'll be able to look my son in the eye and tell him I fought for him. He hung up and turned to Catherine. Mrs. Morrison, we have a custody hearing in 90 minutes. Can you get to the courthouse? I've been waiting years for this chance. Try and stop me. His phone buzzed with one final text from Maria. I'm not signing their papers. We fight together or we lose together. For the first time in 24 hours, Richard smiled. They were walking into a rigged courtroom with impossible odds. But they weren't walking in alone. The Cook County Family Courthouse had seen thousands of custody battles, but rarely had one carried the political and financial implications of Henderson versus Santos. By 1:45 p.m., the gallery was packed with reporters, social workers, and curious onlookers drawn by whispers of a scandal involving Chicago's elite. Judge Daniel Morrison sat behind his mahogany bench, his black robes impeccable, his silver hair perfectly styled. To the casual observer, he appeared to be the picture of judicial dignity. Only Richard could see the slight tremor in the judge's hands. Maria sat across the aisle with David Kim, her court-appointed attorney looking increasingly overwhelmed as Victoria's legal team spread documents across their table like weapons. Tommy was not in the courtroom. He was waiting in a child services facility, unaware that his future was being decided by strangers. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Morrison presiding. Victoria's lead attorney, Margaret Whitman, stood first. Her opening statement was a masterpiece of character assassination disguised as concern for child welfare. She painted Maria as an unstable woman who had kept Richard's son a secret for 7 years, only revealing the truth when she needed money. She presented the fabricated evidence with devastating effectiveness. Your Honor, Margaret concluded, the petitioner seeks emergency custody not out of malice, but out of genuine concern for this child's well-being. David Kim's response was earnest but outmatched. He lacked the experience to counter such sophisticated character assassination. Your Honor, Mrs. Santos is a loving mother who has raised her son under difficult circumstances. She deserves the chance to continue caring for her child. Judge Morrison nodded gravely, but Richard could see the decision already forming behind his eyes. The fix was in. Then James Morrison stood up. Your Honor, before you rule, the defense would like to call a surprise witness. Margaret Whitman shot to her feet. Objection. No surprise witnesses were disclosed during discovery. Your Honor, James replied calmly. This witness has information directly relevant to the court's jurisdiction and the credibility of the proceedings. Judge Morrison's face had gone pale. What witness? The defense calls Catherine Morrison. The judge's gavel clattered to the floor. Scattered gasps rose from the gallery as Richard's ex-wife walked down the center aisle, her worn purse clutched tightly, her eyes fixed on the husband who had destroyed their family for money. Your Honor, Margaret Whitman's voice was sharp with panic. This is highly irregular. She's my ex-wife. Judge Morrison said quietly. Catherine took the witness stand with the dignity of a woman who had waited years for this moment. David Kim approached the stand. Mrs. Morrison, what is your relationship to the presiding judge? Daniel Morrison was my husband for 22 years. We divorced 3 years ago. And why are you here today? Catherine opened her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Because my ex-husband has been taking bribes from wealthy families to fix custody cases for over a decade. And I have proof. The courtroom erupted. Margaret Whitman was shouting objections. Reporters were frantically typing. Judge Morrison's face had turned ashen. Order! Morrison banged his gavel desperately. But Catherine was already speaking, her voice carrying over the chaos. Harold Westmore has paid my ex-husband over $200,000 in the past 5 years to rule in favor of his clients. Bank transfers, email correspondence, meeting records, I have it all. She pulled documents from the envelope, holding them up. Including the payment schedule for today's hearing. $50,000 to rule against Maria Santos. Richard felt his blood turn to ice. Even his own victory had been bought and paid for by Harold Westmore. Judge Morrison stood abruptly. This court is in recess, Your Honor. Catherine's voice stopped him cold. There's one more thing. 3 years ago, you took money from Harold Westmore to rule against me in our custody case. I lost my children because I couldn't afford to pay what he paid you. The judge's face crumpled. 20 years of corruption had finally caught up with him. A court officer was approaching Judge Morrison with handcuffs. Federal investigators were streaming into the courtroom. Catherine Morrison hadn't just brought evidence, she'd brought the FBI. In the chaos, Richard found himself standing face to face with Maria. Is it over? She asked quietly. I think so. But Maria, there's something you need to know. Westmore was paying the judge to rule in my favor. Even if I'd won today, it would have been bought. Maria studied his face. But you didn't know? I swear to you, I had no idea. A new voice cut through the noise. Excuse me, are you Richard Henderson and Maria Santos? They turned to see a woman in a gray suit approaching. I'm Judge Sarachin. I'll be taking over this case immediately. Given the circumstances, I'm declaring a mistrial and ordering a full investigation. She looked directly at Maria. Mrs. Santos, your son is being brought back from child services now. You'll be going home together while we sort out this mess. Maria's knees nearly buckled with relief. Thank you, Your Honor. This case will be heard again in 30 days, with proper oversight. Both parents will have equal access to the child during that time. As they walked out together, Maria's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face went pale. What is it? Richard asked. It's from your mother. She wants to meet. She says she has something that will change everything. After everything they'd been through, Eleanor Henderson still had cards to play. And knowing his mother, they would be her deadliest cards yet. The private dining room at the Chicago Club had hosted power lunches for over a century, its oak-paneled walls witness to deals that shaped the city's skyline. Eleanor Henderson sat at the head of the mahogany table, her posture perfect despite the chaos swirling around her family's empire. Across from her sat Maria Santos, looking small and out of place in her simple black dress among the oil portraits of Chicago's founding fathers. Richard had insisted on coming, but Eleanor had been adamant. This conversation was between women, between mothers. Thank you for coming, Eleanor said, her voice carrying none of its usual commanding authority. I wasn't certain you would. I almost didn't, Maria replied quietly. But Tommy asked about his grandmother. He wants to meet his whole family. Eleanor's composure cracked slightly at the word grandmother. In all her calculations, she never considered that this child might actually want to know her. You've raised a remarkable boy, Eleanor said. His test scores, his teacher evaluations, I've seen them all. He's exceptionally gifted. I know. Sometimes I watch him solving math problems that I can't even understand, and I wonder how a woman like me could have created something so brilliant. You didn't create him alone. The acknowledgement hung in the air between them. For the first time, Eleanor was admitting that Maria hadn't stolen anything from the Henderson family. She'd given them something precious. Why did you really ask me here, Mrs. Henderson? Eleanor reached into her Hermes purse and withdrew a sealed envelope. Because I have something that belongs to you. Something I should have given you 7 years ago. Maria accepted the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, written in Richard's handwriting on Henderson Industries' letterhead. My dearest Maria. It began. I don't know how to tell you this, but my mother informed me today that you've decided to leave Chicago. She says you've taken money and agreed never to contact our family again. I want you to know that if this is truly your choice, I'll respect it, but it's breaking my heart. Maria's hands shook as she continued reading. The letter was 3 pages long, filled with Richard's pain at losing her, his promises to take care of her and their unborn child if she would just come back to him, his declarations of love that she'd never been allowed to receive. He wrote this the day after I visited you, Eleanor said quietly. He was planning to come find you, to propose, to build a life together regardless of what anyone else thought. But you stopped him. I told him you'd already left town. I said you'd made it clear you wanted nothing to do with him or his family. Maria looked up from the letter, tears streaming down her cheeks. 7 years. 7 years he could have been Tommy's father. 7 years we could have been a family. Yes. The simple admission carried the weight of Eleanor's lifetime of regrets. She'd spent decades manipulating and controlling, convinced that she was protecting her family from mistakes that would destroy them. There's more, Eleanor said, reaching into her purse again. This time she withdrew a small velvet box. Richard bought this the week after you disappeared. He was going to propose. Inside was an engagement ring, not the massive diamond that social expectations would have demanded, but a simple, elegant solitaire that spoke of genuine love rather than obligation. He kept it all these years, Maria whispered. In his desk drawer at home. I found it yesterday when I was looking for financial documents. He never told Victoria about it, never sold it, never gave it to anyone else. Maria closed the box carefully, as if it contained something fragile beyond measure. Why are you showing me this? Why now? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Because I'm dying, Maria. The words hit like a thunderbolt. What? Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. The doctors have been quite clear about the prognosis. Maria felt the breath leave her lungs. Does Richard know? No. And I'm not going to tell him. Not yet. He has enough to deal with right now. Then why tell me? Eleanor met her eyes directly. Because I need to know that when I'm gone, my grandson will have people who love him more than their own ambition. People who will choose his happiness over their pride. The vulnerability in Eleanor's voice was something Maria had never expected to hear. I've made terrible mistakes, Eleanor continued. I let my fear of losing control destroy the best chance my son ever had at real happiness. I kept a grandson away from his father and a father away from his son. I can't undo that damage, but maybe I can prevent more. What do you want from me? I want you to marry my son. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Maria stared at Eleanor, searching for any sign of manipulation or hidden agenda. I don't understand. Richard loves you. He's always loved you. And Tommy needs both his parents. Not just visits and custody arrangements, but a real family. Your son is still married to Victoria. Not for long. The divorce will be final within weeks. Victoria's attorney called this morning. She's willing to settle quickly and quietly in exchange for a generous financial package. Maria shook her head slowly. You can't just orchestrate people's lives like chess pieces, Mrs. Henderson. Love doesn't work that way. No, it doesn't. But sometimes love needs a little help overcoming the obstacles that pride and fear create. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm not asking you to love Richard because I want you to. I'm asking you to let yourself love him because you already do. The accusation hit its mark. Maria felt her defenses crumble as she realized Eleanor was right. She did love Richard. She never stopped loving him, even when she'd hated him for abandoning her. What about the company? The board of directors? Your reputation? All meaningless without family to share it with. All worthless if my grandson grows up thinking his grandmother cared more about social standing than about his happiness. Eleanor reached across the table and took Maria's hand, the first gentle gesture she'd ever made toward the woman she'd once threatened. I'm asking for your forgiveness, Maria. Not for Richard's sake, not for Tommy's sake, but for mine. I need to know that I haven't destroyed every chance this family has for redemption. Maria looked down at their joined hands, one soft and manicured, representing generations of privilege, the other work-worn and strong, representing everything Eleanor had tried to keep out of her family. I forgive you, Maria said quietly. But the rest? Richard and I, we have a lot to work through. I know. But you'll work through it together. As a family. Eleanor released Maria's hand and stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced dignity. The ring is yours to keep. Whether you ever use it or not is up to you and Richard. As Maria left the Chicago club, the velvet box felt heavy in her purse, heavy with possibilities, with second chances, with the weight of decisions that would determine whether the Henderson family would end with Eleanor's generation or begin anew with Tommy's. She had a choice to make. And for the first time in 7 years, it felt like a choice she could actually win. 3 months later, the autumn leaves in Lincoln Park painted the world in shades of gold and crimson as Richard Henderson pushed his son on the swing set, listening to Tommy's delighted laughter echo across the playground. It was a sound he never thought he'd hear, pure, innocent joy from a child who finally knew where he belonged. Higher, Dad! Higher! Tommy called out, his blonde hair catching the afternoon sunlight. Dad? The words still sent a thrill through Richard's chest every time he heard it. 3 months of supervised visits, family counseling sessions, and careful relationship building had led to this moment, a lazy Saturday afternoon in the park, just a father and his son. Careful there, Superman, Richard said, slowing the swing gently. Your mom will never forgive me if I send you home with scraped knees. Mom's not mad at you anymore, Tommy said matter-of-factly. She smiles when you come over now. She didn't used to smile. Richard's throat tightened with emotion. The past 3 months had been the hardest and most rewarding of his life. The custody case had been resolved in their favor, joint custody, with Tommy living primarily with Maria but spending weekends and holidays with Richard. Tommy, Richard said, kneeling down as his son climbed off the swing. There's something I want to ask you. Something important. The 7-year-old's blue eyes grew serious. Is it about the bad people? Because Mom says they can't hurt us anymore. No, buddy. This is about something good. Richard reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box that Eleanor had given to Maria 3 months ago. You know how some kids have a mom and dad who live in the same house? Who are married and are a real family? Tommy nodded eagerly. Like Jake at school. His mom and dad live together, and they have family movie nights every Friday. Would you like that? Would you like your mom and dad to live together and be married? Tommy's eyes widened with wonder. You mean like a real family? With family movie nights and everything? Everything. Christmas mornings together, birthday parties, help with homework, all of it. Does Mom want that too? Richard smiled, thinking of Maria's face when he'd asked her the same question just 2 days ago. Yes, Tommy. Mom wants that too. But we wanted to ask you first. Tommy threw his arms around Richard's neck with pure enthusiasm. Yes. 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 Can we have a dog too? Richard laughed, holding his son tight. We'll have to negotiate the dog with your mother. Across the park, Maria sat on a bench watching them, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. The past 3 months had been a journey of healing she'd never thought possible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. How did he take the news? Maria smiled as she typed back. See for yourself. Eleanor Henderson walked slowly across the park, her designer coat elegant even as her frame had grown thinner over the past months. The cancer was winning its battle, but Eleanor faced it with the same determination she'd once used to run Chicago society. Tommy spotted his grandmother and raced toward her with open arms. "Grandma! Grandma! Dad asked me if I want them to get married and I said yes and we might get a dog." Eleanor swept Tommy into a careful hug, her eyes bright with tears. "A dog? My goodness, your father is certainly pulling out all the stops." Richard approached more slowly, still amazed by the transformation in his mother. "Mother! Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss this for the world." Eleanor reached into her purse and withdrew a small wrapped package. "Your father's wedding ring. I thought you might want to wear it when you marry Maria." Richard accepted the gift with trembling hands. He would have loved Tommy. He would have been so proud of the man you've become, Eleanor said softly. "Especially because you're marrying the woman you love, regardless of what anyone else thinks." Maria joined them, slipping her hand into Richard's with natural ease. "Mrs. Henderson. Call me Eleanor. Or better yet, Grandma Eleanor. I rather like the sound of that." Tommy was bouncing with excitement. "Mom, did Dad tell you about the wedding? And the dog?" Maria laughed, ruffling her son's hair. "Let's start with the wedding, Mijo." "Actually," Richard said, pulling the velvet box from his pocket, "we should probably do this properly." Even though they'd discussed it privately, Maria's breath caught as Richard dropped to one knee in the middle of the park, with their son and his mother as witnesses. "Maria Santos," Richard said, his voice carrying across the autumn air. "7 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for lost time?" Maria looked down at the man she'd loved since she was 22, the father of her child, the person who'd fought for their family when it would have been easier to walk away. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." As Richard slipped the ring onto her finger, Tommy cheered and Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "When?" Tommy demanded. "When is the wedding? Can I be the ring bearer?" "How about Christmas?" Eleanor suggested quietly. "A Christmas wedding. New beginnings for the new year." Maria looked at the woman who'd once threatened to have her deported, who'd kept her son from his father for 7 years, but who was now spending her final months trying to heal the wounds she'd inflicted. "Christmas sounds perfect," Maria said. As they walked out of the park together, 4 generations of the Henderson family finally whole, Eleanor fell into step beside Maria. "I know I can never undo the damage I caused," Eleanor said quietly. "But watching you 3 together, it's the greatest gift I could have asked for." Maria squeezed the older woman's arm gently. "You're Tommy's grandmother. You're part of this family now." "Thank you," Eleanor whispered, "for forgiving an old woman who forgot what really mattered." 6 months later, Eleanor Henderson passed away peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by her family. Her final words were about how proud she was of the family she was leaving behind, and on Christmas morning, in a small ceremony attended only by their closest friends, Richard and Maria Henderson exchanged vows. Tommy served as ring bearer, wearing a tuxedo that made him feel like the most important person in the world. As they danced to their first song as a married couple, with their son giggling between them, Maria whispered in Richard's ear, "Do you think she would have approved?" Richard looked up at the ceiling, imagining his mother watching over them. "I think she would have said it was about time." And somewhere in the laughter of a 7-year-old boy who finally had everything he'd ever dreamed of, the Henderson family found their happy ending at last.